The Roman Empire officially ended in the West in the year 476 CE, its last emperor. Romulus Augustulus was deposed by a Germanic general, and history books marked the fall. But the truth is, Rome never really disappeared. Its walls crumbled, its legions vanished. And its emperors faded into memory, yet its systems, ideas, and inventions quietly survived. They adapted, reshaped, and embedded themselves into civilizations that came after. Every time you walk through a city square, read a legal contract, or glance at your calendar, you are touching a piece of Rome. The empire may be gone, but its echoes still govern our daily lives. This is the story of how a civilization, dead for over 1,500 years, continues to rule the modern world. When Rome rose from a city-state to a superpower, it didn't just conquer land, it conquered complexity. The empire stretched across 3 continents, ruling over diverse peoples with different languages, religions, and customs. To keep such a vast territory under control, Rome developed a blueprint for governance that went far beyond brute force. They standardized weights and measures, making trade consistent from Britain to Egypt. They built a system of taxation that was collected in coin, not goods, giving the state financial flexibility. They created administrative provinces, each managed by governors who reported to Rome, ensuring decisions traveled from the capital to the frontier without chaos. They promoted Roman citizenship, not just as a legal status, but as a badge of belonging, turning former enemies into allies. Even conquered elites were offered a place in the Senate or imperial court, binding them to the empire's survival. Public works weren't just for show, they were propaganda made of stone and mortar. Aqueducts brought fresh water to cities, public baths kept populations clean, and forums became centers for politics, commerce, and culture. The message was simple. Rome was not just a ruler, it was a provider. This infrastructure didn't just serve the empire, it taught future civilizations how to organize themselves. The blueprint would survive long after the legions were gone. Long before modern nations drafted constitutions, Rome understood that power needed rules. The early republic created laws to limit the authority of leaders and protect the rights of citizens, at least in theory. As the empire expanded, those laws evolved into one of Rome's greatest legacies, a codified legal system. Roman law was practical, detailed, and adaptable, addressing everything from property disputes to criminal punishment. Contracts, wills, and even corporate partnerships were recognized under Roman statutes. Judges were trained to interpret the law consistently, creating a sense of stability in a world of shifting politics. The idea that written laws should be coherent, accessible, and binding on rulers came directly from Rome. Centuries after the Western Empire fell, Emperor Justinian in Constantinople ordered a massive compilation known as the Corpus Juris Civilista, body of civil law. This collection became the backbone of legal systems in continental Europe, influencing France, Spain, Italy, and eventually their colonies across the world. Even in countries with common law traditions, echoes of Roman thinking remain. Terms like habeas corpus, subpoena, and mens rea Latin phrases still live in modern courtrooms. When you sign a contract, inherit property, or defend your rights in court, you are participating in a tradition shaped by Roman minds 2,000 years ago. Rome didn't just leave monuments, it left an operating system that modern societies still run on. If Roman law was the empire's brain, its roads were the veins and arteries that kept it alive. The Romans did not simply build paths, they engineered lifelines that could move legions, goods, and ideas faster than any civilization before them. Each road began with a carefully surveyed route, straight wherever possible, cutting through hills and forests with unwavering precision. They layered gravel, stones, and concrete to create surfaces that could endure centuries of use. Some of those ancient roads still exist today, their stones worn smooth by time, yet still carrying traffic. The phrase "all roads lead to Rome" was not just a saying, it was a logistical truth. From Britain's windswept frontiers to the deserts of Syria, a Roman road meant connection to the heart of the empire. But the roads were only part of a larger vision. Roma's cities followed a structured design that blended practicality with imperial pride. A forum at the center acted as the political and commercial heart. A basilica provided a covered space for legal proceedings and business. Public baths doubled as social clubs, offering hygiene and relaxation to citizens of all classes. Aqueducts brought water from distant sources, ensuring cities could sustain large populations. Sewers carried waste away, protecting public health in ways most ancient civilizations could not match. Urban planning was not an afterthought. It was a statement of control, order, and prosperity. Even modern cities bear the imprint of this design. From grid layouts to monumental civic buildings inspired by Roman forums and basilicas, Rome built not just for the present, but for permanence, and that is why so many of its structures still stand. Rome's mastery of engineering wasn't just about scale, it was about innovation. Among its most transformative creations was pozzolanic concrete, a volcanic ash mixture that could harden underwater and last for centuries. This material freed Roman architects from the limits of stone construction. They could build domes, vaults, and massive open spaces without relying solely on columns or solid walls for support. The arch, which had existed in earlier cultures, became a Roman trademark once paired with concrete. It allowed bridges to span wide rivers, aqueducts to carry water across valleys, and amphitheaters to rise in tiers that could hold tens of thousands of people. The Pantheon, completed during Emperor Hadrian's reign, remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world, nearly 2,000 years after it was built. Its oculus, a perfect circle at the dome's center, still draws sunlight into the rotunda, connecting earth and sky just as the Romans intended. Beyond function, Roman architecture spoke the language of authority. Grand temples, triumphal arches, massive public buildings were designed to inspire, awe, and project the empire's permanence. Modern capitals from Washington, D.C. to Paris still borrow these visual cues. The domes of government buildings, the columns of courthouses, and the facades of museums all echo Roman forms. Even sports stadiums around the world owe their tiered seating and crowd management systems to the Colosseum-esque design. In stone, concrete, and space, Rome communicated a message. Power can be built to last. And in cities across the globe, that message is still being spoken. Rome didn't just shape the physical world, it ordered the very way we mark time and communicate. The Roman calendar, refined by Julius Caesar in 45 BCE, replaced a chaotic lunar system with the Julian calendar. A solar-based model that brought consistency to civic life. Months were named after gods, festivals, and leaders. January for Janus, the god of beginnings; March for Mars, the god of war; and July for Julius Caesar himself. This calendar structured the rhythms of work, worship, and governance across the empire. Even after the fall of Rome, the Julian system remained so effective that it persisted for more than 1,500 years before being adjusted into the Gregorian calendar we use today. Every time you turn a page on your planner or schedule an appointment for March or October, you are using Roman time. Rome's influence on language is even more profound. Latin, the empire's official tongue, became the foundation for the Romance languages Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian, spoken by hundreds of millions of people today. Even English, though primarily Germanic in origin, contains a vast layer of Latin vocabulary, absorbed through law, religion, and science. Words like justice, structure, culture, and identity carry the DNA of Latin into modern discourse. The Latin alphabet itself, 26 letters refined and standardized by Rome, has become the global writing system, used to record everything from ancient philosophy to digital code. In medieval Europe, Latin was the language of scholarship, diplomacy, and religion, ensuring that Rome's voice continued to shape ideas long after its armies were gone. Every contract signed, every book published, and every law passed in much of the world owes a debt to Roman words and Roman ways of counting time. Rome's empire was not only a network of cities and soldiers, it was a network of ideas. When Christianity emerged in the 1st century CE, it was a small, persecuted sect within the vast religious diversity of the Roman world. What allowed it to grow from scattered communities into a dominant faith was Rome's own infrastructure. The empire's road system connected distant provinces with unprecedented speed. A message carried by a missionary in Antioch could reach believers in Rome in weeks instead of months. The Roman postal network, designed for official dispatches, often became an unofficial channel for the spread of letters and teachings. Roman cities, with their concentrated populations, provided fertile ground for new ideas to take hold. The Pax Romana period of relative peace enforced by Roman military power meant that travel across much of the empire was safer than in most ancient times. Early Christian leaders, including Paul the Apostle, used these very routes to spread their teachings, planting congregations in key urban centers. By the 4th century, Emperor Constantine recognized both the political and social power of this growing movement. With the Edict of Milan in 313 CE, Christianity was granted legal status, ending centuries of official persecution. Soon after, the Church adopted Roman administrative habits. Dioceses mirrored imperial districts. Bishops functioned like provincial governors, and councils operated much like senatorial sessions. When the Western Empire fell, the Roman Church remained, inheriting the role of unifier and record-keeper. Through the Church, Latin literacy, Roman law, and even architectural traditions survived the chaos of the early medieval period. Rome's faith may have changed from Jupiter to Jesus, but its systems lived on. The empire's roads had carried not only troops and taxes, but a belief system that would outlast the empire itself. For most ancient civilizations, belonging was tied to birth and bloodline. You were part of a tribe, a clan, or a city-state. Because you were born into it, outsiders rarely became insiders. Rome changed that rule. In the early Republic, Roman citizenship was exclusive, a privilege of the people of the city of Rome itself. But as the empire expanded, leaders realized that the strength of their rule depended on integrating conquered peoples. Citizenship became a tool of unity and loyalty. It offered legal protections, property rights, and the ability to appeal directly to the emperor. For allies and conquered elites, it was a reward. For Rome, it was an investment. The more people felt they were Roman, the less likely they were to rebel. Over time, the circle widened. By the 1st century CE, entire communities could be granted citizenship as recognition for service or loyalty. Then, in 212 CE, Emperor Caracalla issued the Constitutio Antoniana, extending Roman citizenship to nearly all free inhabitants of the empire. It was a revolutionary move. Political identity was no longer bound to a single city, but could be shared across continents. This concept that a state could grant membership to people from vastly different backgrounds would echo through history. Modern nation-states, from the United States to the European Union, operate on the same principle. Citizenship is a legal status that transcends ethnicity. Rome proved that political belonging could be manufactured and expanded, creating a sense of shared identity in a diverse empire. Even today, the passport in your pocket is a descendant of the Roman idea that belonging can be extended by law. The Roman military was not simply a fighting force, it was an engineered system. While other armies relied on individual heroism or overwhelming numbers, Rome relied on organization, standardization, and discipline. The backbone of this system was the legion, typically consisting of about 5,000 men. Every soldier carried standardized weapons, armor, and equipment, making supply and repair far more efficient. Their training was relentless, drilling formations, maneuvers, and construction skills until they became second nature. A Roman legion could march 20 miles in a day, then build a fortified camp, complete with walls, ditches, gates, and watchtowers before nightfall. These castra, or military camps, were laid out in precise grids, a design that later influenced the structure of many European cities. Roman commanders understood that battles were often won before swords were drawn. They built roads to move troops faster, bridges to cross rivers without delay, and supply depots to keep armies fed and equipped.
Ow.
They saw logistics not as a burden, but as a weapon. In fact, some of Rome's greatest victories were the result of starving the enemy or forcing them into disadvantageous positions rather than defeating them in open battle. This focus on preparation and infrastructure survives in modern militaries, from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to NATO supply chains. The principle is the same. An army's effectiveness depends as much on its ability to move, build, and supply as on its ability to fight. Rome's legions may be gone, but the mindset they pioneered continues to march forward. When the Western Roman Empire officially collapsed in 476 CE, it seemed like the end of an age. The imperial court vanished, the legions dissolved, and the great cities of the West shrank or crumbled. But the empire's systems didn't simply disappear. They migrated, transformed, and resurfaced in new forms. In the East, the Byzantine Empire, calling itself simply the Roman Empire, continued for almost 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, administration, and infrastructure. Its capital, Constantinople, became the new Rome, a fortress of wealth and culture that bridged Europe and Asia. In the West, Rome's fall created power vacuums, but its memory and methods persisted through the Catholic Church. Latin remained the language of scholarship, law, and religion. Roman roads continued to guide trade routes, even as weeds grew between the stones. The feudal kingdoms that rose in Rome's shadows still relied on Roman concepts of land ownership, taxation, and authority, though now adapted to local Roman engineering to build stronger cities, Roman rhetoric to shape politics, and Roman law to create stable governments. Even as the map of Europe shifted with wars and new empires, Rome's operating system kept rebooting under different names. The empire had died and named. Its bones, its language, and its logic still held Europe together. Rome was not gone! It had simply changed its clothes. Walk through Washington, D.C., Paris, or London, and you'll see Rome staring back at you. The domes, columns, and arches that frame government buildings are direct descendants of Roman architecture. The U.S. Capitol's very name is a nod to the Capitoline Hill in ancient Rome. It's not just the look, it's the logic. Modern legal systems in Europe, Latin America, and parts of Africa are rooted in Roman law, especially the codified principles found in Emperor Justinian's Corpus Juris Civilis. Concepts like contracts, property rights, and legal precedent come from Roman jurisprudence and are still taught in law schools today. Even the Senate, a cornerstone of democratic governance, traces its name and structure to the Roman Republic. Rome's city planning grids, aqueducts, sewer systems, public squares inspired urban design for centuries. New York's Manhattan grid echoes the layout of Roman colonial towns. And the idea of public infrastructure as a government duty remains a foundational civic principle. Culturally, Rome left a stamp on language. Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, together spoken by nearly 1 billion people, are direct descendants of Latin. Scientific and medical terminology still relies heavily on Latin words, ensuring that professionals from different countries can communicate precisely. Even entertainment carries Roman DNA. Sports stadiums, with tiered seating and mass spectacles, are heirs to the Colosseum. Political dramas, courtroom arguments, and even military parades follow Roman patterns of performance and symbolism. Rome didn't just influence the past, it embedded itself into the world's everyday functions. Every time you walk into a courthouse, cast a vote, or turn on a tap, you are touching the legacy of an empire that ended 1,500 years ago, yet somehow never left. If there's one truth Rome teaches, it's that empires are built on systems, not on individuals. Julius Caesar, Augustus, Trajan, they were giants of history. But their legacies survived not because of their personalities, but because of the machinery they left behind. Rome understood that infrastructure, law, and culture were the pillars of longevity. Roads were more than stone. They were arteries of commerce, communication, and control. Law wasn't just a set of rules, it was a shared language of rights and duties that bound diverse peoples together. Culture wasn't an afterthought, it was a weapon, turning conquered lands into participants in the Roman story. Modern superpowers echo this blueprint. The United States projects influence not only through its military, but through a global network of trade, media, technology, and diplomacy, much like Rome's combination of legions and roads. China's Belt and Road Initiative mirrors Rome's infrastructure expansion, tying other nations into a system where commerce and politics are inseparable. Even the European Union, with its shared currency, open borders, and unified laws, reflects the Roman idea that strength comes from integration. Rome's downfall, however, warns us. Overextension, internal division, and neglect of civic unity can undo even the strongest systems. An empire doesn't fall in a single day phrase from within until the center can no longer hold. That's why the real lesson is not just how Rome rose, but how it fell. It's a reminder that power must be maintained with the same discipline and vision that built it. In this sense, Rome is not just history, it's a mirror in which every modern power can see its future, for better or worse. Stand in the ruins of the Roman Forum, and you can almost hear the echoes, merchants haggling, senators arguing, soldiers marching home in triumph. It feels like a vanished world. But it isn't gone. Rome is still in our cities, our laws, our languages, and our ambitions. Every time a government drafts a constitution, every time an engineer builds a bridge, every time a lawyer argues a case, Rome whispers in the background. Its roads may be broken, its marble faded, but its blueprint is alive, copied, adapted, and reborn by every civilization that came after. Empires may fall, but ideas do not. Rome's greatest victory wasn't the conquest of Gaul or the defeat of Carthage, it was the conquest of time itself. The Caesars are dust, the legions are gone, but the empire, it still walks among us, disguised in the uniforms of modern power. Speaking in the tongues of a billion people, ruling in the chambers of parliaments and courts, Rome never truly ended, it simply became the world.